everybody. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. We're bringing you some more information here with what has quickly become Tropical Storm Sally here. What was Tropical Depression 19. Now, if you're having trouble following along with all that is happening out in the Atlantic right now, I don't blame you. We've got a lot going on. We've made it through a lot of names here, but the one storm that is having an immediate impact, so to speak, relatively to the other areas of interest or storms out in the Atlantic Basin is this one, Tropical Storm Sally, that became one just this afternoon at the 2 p.m. Eastern advisory out of the National Hurricane Center. I want to draw your attention to our MyRadar app. We'll be tracking with you, and open your app, track along with us as we go through and dig through all the data here that's come out of the National Hurricane Center today for this storm. I've got the winds layer here popped up on the radar, and you can see a lot of rain moving over the Florida Peninsula, over the Florida Straits. And I'm going to turn on the hurricane tracker so you can follow along with me here. So this has been the path, became a tropical depression just off the eastern side of the Florida Peninsula. Spent the past evening and much of today making its way across the little tip of Florida there, now emerging into the Gulf of Mexico. It is a tropical storm, and something that might be interesting to you. You said, hey, Stefanie, this thing went over land. How did it strengthen into a tropical storm? Well, a couple of factors there. Not much working against the organization of this storm here over the past 24 hours. It's a very short trip over there on the tip of South Florida, and at that, a lot of that area is moisture. It went over the Everglades National Park there, which Marjorie Stoneman Douglas herself called the Sea of Grass. So a lot of moisture in the landmass itself to kind of help fuel this storm, if you would, as it's made its way across the tip of Florida here over the past 12 or so hours. But this is the path here that I've got up on the radar. It is making its way into the Gulf of Mexico, those very warm Gulf of Mexico waters that these tropical systems love to use as fuel. And we'll go into what's ahead of this storm going on into the next 48 hours or so before it has to make its approach to the northern Gulf of Mexico coast here. So again, if you've got your MyRadar app open, you can track along with us. We're seeing a lot of rain here across the Gulf Coast, anywhere from the tip of Florida along the Florida Keys, where the bulk of that rain is, and then bringing showers across the Florida Peninsula all the way through parts of inland Georgia and Alabama, all the way across Louisiana. Not all of that rain is associated with Sally, but we'll see the rain chances and the rip current risk increase for folks along the Gulf Coast of Florida, Alabama, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana going into the next couple of days. But we're going to break down what we know so far about this storm, what we're watching for here as we head into the rest of the weekend and the beginning of this upcoming week, and so far what the National Hurricane Center is expecting to get from this storm as it approaches our friends out on the Gulf Coast. So we'll turn now to our WSI graphics. We got Fernam and Matt helping out behind the scenes here, and watch this next graphic come up, guys. It's just so busy. The Atlantic Basin, we've got a lot of friends out here, or friends because they're staying away from us for the most part. So an area of interest with a moderate chance of development over the next 5 days. That's the blob you see there in orange coming off the coast of Africa. We've seen a couple of waves doing so here over the past week. Of course, the peak of hurricane season was September 10th, a couple days ago, so not unusual to see all this busy activity out there. Now we have Tropical Depression 20, which was given its title this afternoon, and then we've got Paulette, Renee, Sally, and yet another area of interest in the Gulf of Mexico with a low chance of development here. And either way, as you can see from the shape of that yellow area, it's going to be moving away from the U.S. and it could bring some showers to folks down by the Rio Grande Valley or mostly into Mexico as we head into the beginning of next week. So for this reason, we're going to focus on the storm that actually has the potential to impact folks here in the continental U.S., and that is Tropical Storm Sally. Again, off the coast of southwest Florida here, making its way into the Gulf of Mexico. And this is what we're expecting for the path as we head into the next 5 days. Yes, it is expected to intensify to hurricane strength as it approaches a rather ambiguous cone area across the northern Gulf Coast. Folks anywhere from the Big Bend of Florida out to Louisiana need to keep their eyes on this forecast as we head into the next couple of days because there does remain a bit of uncertainty as to the exact path, approach, and potential landfall of this system heading into the next couple of days. But the National Hurricane Center does feel fairly confident that Sally will intensify into at least a Category 1 hurricane. Current stats on this storm have it at a tropical storm boasting winds, maximum sustained winds, I should say, of 40 miles per hour. And something that will somewhat aid in that intensity is its slower speed. It doesn't have such an aggressive steering setup in the atmosphere right now to have it moving along as quickly as the last storm we had here in the Gulf of Mexico, Laura. Of course, this doesn't look to be that similar of a scenario other than the fact that they're both Gulf storms at this point where it stands. So that's the silver lining here. But storms moving along at 8 miles per hour and generally going to stay on this path here into the next couple of days until we hit the beginning of next week. And then at some point we will see a turn to generally the north. Could be towards the northwest and hang a little bit further west towards the boot of Louisiana. Could shift a little bit more towards the east and be a potential impact for folks along the Florida Panhandle. So it's a rather wide area of impact that we're looking at as of this point with the current data. So stay tuned, guys. This forecast is going to be evolving as we head into tomorrow and get more data from the National Hurricane Center's hurricane hunters, and National Weather Service offices here along the Gulf Coast will resume those special soundings. Again, going from those regular 2 soundings they do a day, morning and night, to now 4 soundings a day to get that extra atmospheric data to help with the track and also the intensity of Sally going into the next couple of days. So this is where we're at, expected to become a rather strong Category 1 hurricane by the time we head into Monday. And notice the proximity along the current forecast path does bring it pretty close to the northern Gulf Coast. So folks along here will start to see impacts as early as tomorrow evening for folks along the west coast of Florida. And initially we'll see this with the surf, and we did see that already today. I'm going to bring up that Surfline camera from Bradenton Beach. This is somewhat near the Tampa Bay area, roundabouts generally in that metro area, and you can see right now not much because it's nighttime, but the surf was looking pretty unpleasant today. Not the best beach day, but as the camera, this is a multi-camera product we have from our friends over at Surfline. As it shifted to the north, we did see some blue skies there a little bit earlier today, but generally over Florida, not looking the most friendliest in terms of beach days because of the storm's proximity. We've had showers moving through not just South Florida, but through Central Florida as well, and even some showers up into North Florida on the periphery of that storm. So here we've seen the camera shifted a bit, and sunset, it's pretty nice, but we've seen these waters come down a bit. Wasn't the best beach day earlier here. You can see those storms off in the distance, pretty tall ones there. Storm clouds bring showers, heavy downpours with these showers moving over parts of South Florida and the surrounding bodies of water here. But we'll take it back to our WSI graphics here. I want to show you those watches and warnings that have been put up in advance of Tropical Storm Sally. And Tropical Storm Watch does impact parts of the Florida Panhandle. This then goes across right at the Florida-Alabama state line is where we begin our Hurricane Watch. And this goes all the way around the panhandles of Alabama into Mississippi and the tip of the boot there in Louisiana. So the official points being for that Hurricane Watch from Grand Isle, Louisiana, moving eastward across towards the Alabama-Florida border. And that does include Lake Pontchartrain and Lake Maurepas for the metro New Orleans area. And a Tropical Storm Watch goes from that point at the Florida-Alabama border, moving eastward to the Ocklawaha River there in Florida, just towards the east, south of Tallahassee and near Apalachicola. So folks in this area need to keep an eye out on the forecast because, like I said, there's uncertainty in the track as we head out into days 3, 4, and 5, which is typical with tropical systems. So especially in this case, the steering mechanisms at play are not quite as cut and dry as with some previous storms we've had this season. By the way, this is the 4th storm to occur in the Gulf of Mexico this season. We had Cristobal, that was earlier in the season. I think actually before the season officially started, making landfall once it had begun. And then we dealt with Hannah for folks along the coastline of Texas, near Corpus Christi and south towards Brownsville. Then most recently we had Laura, and now we do expect to see folks along the northern Gulf Coast once again preparing for the impacts from Sally heading into next week. So it's been a very active season, especially for folks here along the Gulf Coast. You always got to stay prepared for these systems. But going now to the storm surge threat, that's particularly a concern for folks in the Gulf of Mexico when it comes to these tropical systems. More vulnerable because of the type of coastline here. And we typically see more of a threat within the Gulf of Mexico, especially for folks along the northern Gulf Coast. So not a surprise to see we already have storm surge watches in effect for this light pink area that spans most of the area within the hurricane watch. So the worst of the storm surge would be between 6 to 9 feet on the current forecast track and intensity from the National Hurricane Center. So that biggest threat for surge is going to be at the mouth of the Mississippi River. Folks towards the east, near Florida and Mobile Bay, could expect to see anywhere from 4 to 6 feet of surge or 1 to 3 feet of surge, depending on the tide once the storm approaches. All that timing comes into play when it comes to the storm surge. So something we'll be watching for as we head into tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. Again, while the storm will not be making landfall until about Tuesday, Wednesday along the current path, we will see those impacts begin to be felt for folks along the Gulf Coast heading into as early as tomorrow evening. Sunday evening into Monday could see some rip currents, likely to see rip currents for folks along the Gulf Coast from Florida, southwest Florida, north around to the panhandle of Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana going into tomorrow and the next several days. So let's take a look at the radar for what's happening right now. We'll do some analysis and see what's going on with these thunderstorms that are moving over Florida, because folks especially in the Keys, have been dealing with very heavy rainfall. And there's a special marine warning right off the coast of Fort Myers there, but we'll get rid of that box and zoom in a little bit closer here. Much of that rain now isolated to southern Florida. We had some strong showers moving here outside the MyRadar studios just a couple hours ago. It was not so much stormy, but just heavy rainfall, which causes problems for folks out on the roadways. So happy to see some of that finally become alleviated. Zoom in a little bit closer here. See if let's go back to it. Some technical difficulties. Just a moment. All right, let's get in a little closer here if we can. Put this into play so you guys have something to see while I maneuver this a bit. All right, zooming in a little bit closer to that tip of southwest Florida. You can see that characteristic counterclockwise flow looking much better organized just from the radar view than it did earlier on today. Beginning to see some more banding features with this tropical storm right off the coast of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties here. Going on into tonight, a band of heavy rainfall. Plenty of rain, like I said, for folks here, especially in the lower Keys, Key West up through Marathon. Very heavy rainfall rates for folks here, and the bulk of the heavy rain north of that, thankfully, is over water. So folks across Collier and Monroe counties not getting quite as much heavy rainfall inland, but definitely along the coastline here, seeing some heavy rainfall impacts. We'll get you some of those rainfall totals here in just a moment. I want to zoom into the Keys because, again, they've been seeing a bulk of these heavy rainstorms throughout today. So some of the current, let's stop this so we can see. Some of the current rainfall totals just north of the Keys here in US 1. Almost an inch of rainfall per hour. That's a lot of rain in a short amount of time. Very heavy rainfall rates here. Get rid of that one and take a look at near Key West. A little bit lighter here. Over a half inch, 0.61 inches per hour rainfall. And then as we take you into the Gulf of Mexico, this is over water, but still just goes to show you how much water is in the atmosphere here. Getting over about an inch and a half of rainfall per hour with some of these storms within the circulation and these heavier bands. So lots of rain to be accumulated for folks here in southwest Florida going on through the next several hours until the storm begins to pull away, moving into the Gulf of Mexico. So I'll show you, these storms aren't very tall. We're not really seeing a lot of lightning with these, but what we have seen is storm tops around 20 to 30 feet into the atmosphere. So it just accounts for some of that heavier rainfall, and you can see really downpouring over the coastline there in Miami now, near Key Biscayne and northward into downtown. And that, again, that spans all the way up into parts of Broward and Palm Beach counties as well. We'll move this for you so you can see some of those storm tops there. So yeah, a couple of these trying to approach the 30,000 feet height. But really the main story with these bands moving through South Florida is the heavy rainfall that's been ongoing since yesterday, causing some flooding concerns. To see how that data piles into the 11 o'clock advisory, and that'll be the next full advisory where the suite of information comes in. But they've been, they're a wind speed of 29 miles per hour, surface pressure reported at one point at 1,003 millibars. Out of the official forecast, that's right on par. Minimum central pressure as of the 8 p.m. advisory is 1,003 millibars, or 29.62 inches if you prefer that unit. So there's more flights scheduled into this storm going on into tomorrow, but I think as it heads into the Gulf, away from land where we have fewer resources other than some of the rigs out in the Gulf, is when we'll see some more of those flights being scheduled and some more information coming into play there. So now let's take a look at some satellite imagery. We're going to go to infrared here. We start out with this, nice and pleasant with the pretty colors. It does a really good job of helping us visualize some of those stronger convective pockets within the storm. So those brighter shades of red and darker shades of gray being the most active thunderstorms, or at this point we're not really seeing much in terms of lightning other than immediately near the center of circulation. But yeah, that's no surprise that we're seeing more of that bubbling up happening here over the past couple of hours. This is a 6-hour loop, so we've seen better organization, more convection within this system. So that means we're getting more intensification and organization within this counterclockwise spin. And so that's where we went from depression to now tropical storm, getting its act together a little bit better here. But when we go to water vapor, this is a product I like to use to help kind of look at the top of the atmosphere from the top down, and we kind of see what's in play in terms of moving Sally through the Gulf of Mexico here. This is not quite as simple as it was with Laurel. We were just watching the Atlantic Ridge and trough moving across the U.S. We've got a lot in play because we've got more than one system going on here in the Atlantic Basin. So let me point out a couple of things to help you get your bearings. Here's the Gulf coastline here. Orange color is some drier air in the upper atmosphere. So we've got a bit of a break in the moisture between Sally's outer bands here and Paulette's sheared off bands, if you will, over here towards the end. Is attracted to lower pressure and high pressure. We tend to look for that here over the Atlantic Ocean to kind of generally steer things along from the east towards the west. So it's not quite as obvious here when you're looking at this. Let's break this down. So Paulette is over here. You can see a former front moving across. So that's one feature to point out. We've also got another front making its way across the U.S. Zoom out a little bit more so we get a better view of the U.S. as a whole. So where are my arrows? Okay. We've got a trough dipping down across the western U.S. And there's that cold front. You can cross it. But this is a trough of low pressure. So this is a general motion of air. Then this continues. We have a ridge of high pressure. And that kind of breaks off once we get here and moves into more troughing again, running up against this boundary here and getting sheared off. Oh, by the way, did you notice this counterclockwise spin over here? Just in the upper level, a little bit of low pressure here. So that's really helping to shear off this western side of Paulette. And eventually, this general flow of air is what's going to be taking Paulette out to sea. And that's why its current track looks the way it does, not looking to be a threat to the U.S. and just making its way off towards the east into the ocean. Now, looking back towards Sally. Let's clear all this out. We'll zoom in a little closer. Repeats. All right, let's zoom in a little bit closer. Excuse me. Okay, we got our arrows back. Notice this counterclockwise spin here. That area of interest that had a low chance of development. Well, you can see it. Mexico likely to get some very heavy rainfall from that, but really not much of a threat for the continental U.S. at this time. Another steering mechanism here. Oh, I lost my arrows. So once again, that trough, we have a ridge here. So that is going to keep Sally from kind of meandering too far towards the west, because we expect this to be moving towards the east. A lot of steering near Sally. It's off the coast of Florida, kind of meandering into the Gulf of Mexico, somewhat attracted to this trough, and high pressure. Let's draw the bottom of that high pressure, that ridge. Generally meandering on its way into the Gulf of Mexico, and that's what plays into so much of that uncertainty in the track going into the next 3 days, because the movement of these features over the continental U.S. will influence the path as it nears the Gulf Coast. So that's the reason why we have concern for folks anywhere from the middle coastline of Louisiana going out towards the panhandle of Florida, because we're watching to see what's going to be going so far. So that's really something we're going to have to see. That's where those extra soundings from the National Weather Service offices really comes into play to help understand what the steering mechanisms are going to be doing. And Monday, that will be most telling. Fortunately, that's not great timing, because by then some of these impacts will begin to move onshore the Gulf coastline from the Big Bend of Florida out towards Louisiana. So what is the main point here, folks? You don't need to panic, but you do need to keep an eye on this forecast and be prepared as Sally crosses on into the Gulf of Mexico here and begins to near the northern Gulf of next week. So I'm going to take you back to the app now, and we'll do some looking around with the path here and the winds layer, so to speak. So here's the path, just as another reminder. Again, going into about day 3 or so, we've got a rather wide area that we're keeping an eye on. Again, spanning from about Morgan City, Louisiana, as the far western extent of the cone, eastward into about the Pensacola, Panama City Beach area, Florida. So that's a pretty So folks here, you need to keep an eye on the forecast as we head into the end of this weekend and the beginning of next week. Make your preparations. I know you got your kit ready, because we were talking about doing that at the beginning of the season. So I know you guys are ready. Just give it another look. Have your plan in place. Remind your family members what the plan is. Take the tracker off, and we'll take a better look at some of those winds. Again, this is a tropical storm right now. Maximum sustained winds of 40 miles per hour. It's becoming better organized. You can see there's not a lot of rain activity on the western side of it, but as it moves over the Gulf of Mexico, very warm waters here, and it is expected to intensify and become better organized. And so with that, we'll see the rainfall moving into folks along the western coast of Florida, headed in to the end of the weekend and the beginning of next week. But again, all eyes are on the northern Gulf Coast, anywhere from the Big Bend of Florida out to about the middle coastline of Louisiana, where we expect to see the impacts of Sally heading into the beginning of our upcoming next week. All right, guys, that's it for us tonight. The next full throughout the weekend. Stay with us and stay safe.